Dr. Satterfield Prince, a doctor for rich people, checked his watch. It showed it was almost 12 o'clock. Soon, his morning appointments would end. The last patient, a nicely dressed middle-aged lady, came in. She wanted Dr. Prince to help her daughter, who had a strange problem. The lady, Mrs. Galloway Rankin, spoke slowly with a southern accent. She explained that her daughter had a mysterious illness. Mrs. Rankin believed it was because of a long family fight between the Beals and the Rankins in Kentucky. The feud lasted for generations until only one Beal and one Rankin were left. These two, Evelina Beal and Galloway Rankin, fell in love and got married, ending the feud. Mrs. Rankin mentioned that the Rankins became rich from coal mines. Now, they had a daughter named Annabel Rankin, who was 20 years old. Mrs. Rankin wanted Dr. Prince to help Annabel with her mysterious illness. She described the strange problem Annabel had. It was hard for Miss Annabel to walk properly. Her movements didn't cooperate well. For example, when she tried to go up the stairs, one foot went up while the other wanted to go down. Sometimes she had to struggle to control her steps. Mrs. Rankin believed this problem came from the old feud between the Beals and Rankins. She thought the rivalry between the families passed on to Annabel, making her steps conflicted. Dr. Prince listened carefully and promised to visit Annabel the next day to check on her. When he arrived at their fancy hotel, he was surprised to see Annabel's beauty but felt sorry when he saw her struggle to walk. She moved awkwardly and finally rested on a couch with a sad look on her face. Dr. Prince asked Annabel and her mother about the feud theory. They both believed it. Then, Dr. Prince left, promising to return and help Annabel. He went to meet with Dr. Grumbleton Myers, a specialist in nerve problems. After discussing Annabel's case, both doctors felt uncertain about how to help her. Myers said, "We don't know much. We should treat her symptoms until we figure out what's wrong," Dr. Prince told Dr. Myers. "Maybe it's the feud thing," Dr. Prince joked. "It's an interesting case," Dr. Myers replied, not committing to an opinion. Dr. Prince worked hard on Annabel's case. He even used a fancy light at night. But nothing worked. Finally, he suggested hypnotism. He brought in Professor Adami, a well-respected hypnotist. Annabel believed what the professor told her under hypnosis. She thought her problem was just in her head. When she woke up, she walked perfectly. Her mom cried tears of joy. Everyone thanked the doctors and left. Annabel felt happy and played the piano. Suddenly, her arm acted strangely. It moved away from the piano on its own. They realized it was because of a ping-pong table in the room. "Let's play a game, Miss Rankin," Professor Adami said cheerfully. They played tennis. Annabel played well even with her strange arm. Then, the professor pretended his coat button was loose and asked Annabel for a needle and thread. Annabel brought them, but when she tried to thread the needle, her arm jerked away. Dr. Prince explained that her affliction had moved to her arms. Annabel sighed. She now had a Beal arm and a Rankin arm. But she could manage using one hand at a time. She wished there were laws against family feuds. A few days later, they tried again. This time, it seemed to work perfectly. Annabel walked and played the piano without any problems. A week later, T. Ripley Ashburton, Annabel's fiancé, visited Dr. Prince. He said Annabel had been doing better since the treatment, but now there was a new problem. He hesitated to share but felt he should. There was something else bothering Annabel, and he wanted Dr. Prince's help. If you know something that could help Annabel, Dr. Prince said seriously, it's your duty to tell us. Remember, this stays between us as a professional secret. Mr. Ashburton nodded, still playing with his pocket. Annabel and I are very close, he explained. She's a great girl, even if she's from Kentucky. Lately she's been acting strangely. One moment she's loving, the next she treats me like a stranger. Last night, I visited her at the hotel. She kissed me nicely at first, then suddenly slapped me and said she hated me. Here's a note she wrote. It's odd, you know. Dr. Prince read the note. My dear Ripley, please come tonight and take me out. Mom has a headache, so we'll have the place to ourselves. Thanks for the lilies, they're perfect. You're so sweet and thoughtful. I'm sure you're loved by everyone. Yours, Annabel. P.S. Actually, don't come tonight. I have other plans. Maybe you haven't realized that not everyone enjoys your company as much as you think. Clothes and talk about clubs and races don't make up for other things. Sincerely, Annabel Rankin. T. Ripley Ashburton sat quietly, feeling sad. Dr. Prince realized that Annabel's strange behavior was because of the old family feud. The doctor promised to visit Annabel soon with Professor Adami to try and help her. After discussing the strange situation, they visited Annabel. It took some convincing, but she agreed to let Professor Adami try to help her again. Thankfully, she woke up from the treatment feeling fine, just like before. Dr. Prince waited anxiously to hear from Mr. Ashburton about any changes. One day, Mr. Ashburton happily reported that Annabel was back to her normal self. She was kind and friendly again, without any strange behavior. Mr. Ashburton even invited Dr. Prince and Professor Adami for supper to see how well Annabel was doing. At the supper, Annabel looked stunning and full of life. She suddenly changed her dress and chatted with everyone cheerfully. She even walked downstairs with Professor Adami and then switched to talk with Dr. Prince about how grateful she was for their help. It seemed like everything was going well, but Annabel still had some odd moments. Do you like New York? Asked Dr. Prince, curious about her. Annabel perked up at his question. I love New York. The theaters, dances, and drives are wonderful. Oh, Ripley, she called to Ashburton, forget about the bull pup, I want a Pomeranian now. As they stepped onto the pavement, Annabel spotted a carriage. I don't want a carriage, I want an auto. Send it away. Sure thing, said Ashburton, and the carriage left, replaced by an open auto. Yucky, smelly thing. Annabel wrinkled her nose. Let's walk. Ripley, you and Dr. Prince take care of Mom. Come on, Professor Adami. Everyone followed along. Isn't she lively? Mrs. Rankin said happily to Dr. Prince. She's so much better than before. Yeah, Ashburton said proudly. She's like a New Yorker now, always changing her mind. That's Annabel. At the fancy restaurant, Annabel was full of energy. She ordered and changed her mind constantly, keeping the waiters busy. Her talk was lively but inconsistent, with lots of contradictions and changes. Ashburton admired Annabel's new behavior, seeing it as fitting in with their social circle. Later, Dr. Prince and Professor Adami talked on the corner. Looks like she's better now, the professor said happily. Our treatment worked. Dr. Prince agreed, keeping his thoughts about the feud to himself. He visited Dr. Myers again, and they smoked and chatted. Yeah, Dr. Myers said, as long as nobody suspects anything, it's fine. Annabel's feud thing is hidden well.